They know the records aren't classified, so they know the information is in government records. So all the applications of the laws they're pretending apply really don't apply. I mean, the Espionage Act, even if read in the elastic way in which it's been applied to people who weren't engaged in espionage, just the mishandling classified or defense related information, it doesn't apply to President Trump because these were his personal records under Justice Department policy, the Presidential Records Act, which has no enforcement mechanism against the president, and the U.S. Constitution. You know, the courts have the president's power to declassify and take records that are personal to him or designate them as personal to him arise out of his constitutional powers. This is not a question that can be second guessed by DOJ anti-Trumpers in the Justice Department, the FBI, and the archives. You know, the archives believe everything that happens in the White House is, needs to be retained and recorded. But, I understand bureaucratically why that's their position. That's, their job is to get records, right? But it's not what the law is. And as we've highlighted, and I'm sure you've pointed out, it isn't how they applied the law to Hillary Clinton. Now, Hillary Clinton, unlike President Trump, couldn't take records and declassify them without going through a process and alerting folks to them. She certainly couldn't maintain classified records on unsecured networks. Her colleagues couldn't send her classified information on unsecured networks. She did all of that. This same archives refused to enforce the law against her similarly. This Justice Department and State Department, we sued them, Jenna. We couldn't even get them to send her a letter under the Federal Records Act, which, kind of triggers an investigative process. And of course, the lack of criminal prosecution, the lack of any raids and such obviously speak for themselves as well. Mm-hmm. So, everything they want to do against Trump, they should have done against Hillary, but didn't. And I include also the Schiff request for a damage assessment of spillage, right? Classified information. If it's out there in an irregular way, the agencies are allowed and should, in many ways, figure out if there was any damage, right? Well, they're pretending that's the issue with Trump, and they want to do a damage assessment. We sued to try to get a damage assessment done by Hillary, and they refused to. So this isn't this unequal application of the law is outrageous, but it shows the political nature of the raid. And I would interpret this just as, essentially the Democratic Party raiding their likely opponent for 2024. It doesn't get any more complex than that. And, we can talk about the legal back and forth and why it was a shady raid in terms of prior law and Justice Department policy and what they did to Hillary. But we all know. I mean, the record is they hate Trump, and the law is to be used to get him, not to be applied consistently and fairly.